Jeff Boggs here on the, I don't know, 7th time I've recorded this damn thing. This is a mini lecture on Peterborough and the Canadian Shield transition zone. We like, in the Geography and Tourism Studies program at Brock University, to send our students to Peterborough for a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons we like to send physical geographers into the area around Peterborough is that it is a nifty site in which they can see changes in the landscape related to the geologically recent glaciation of North America. And in particular, what we see is that there is a transition zone between the Canadian Shield, which is the area north of this line. So here's the line. So kind of up here, this is the Canadian Shield, or at least as it is in the kind of a transect around Peterborough, Ontario. And then to the south of this line is an area of glacial deposition in which various processes deposited a wide range of glacial till and other kinds of glacial deposits that in earlier versions of this mini lecture I went on ad nauseum about, but which I will sort of leave it at that for this point. So what that means then is that this area down here has soils that are going to be different from soils sort of north of this line, though this line is by no means a kind of a razor sharp demarcation between these two zones. But in general, what you see is that south of this red line, so this area with the blue lines, this is an area which is covered in glacial deposition, and that affects the quality of the soils, whereas the area above that line is an area of the Canadian Shield, and it tends to be characterized, especially as you continue north, by relatively undeveloped or poorer soils. This is interesting not only for physical geographers who are interested in geomorphology, but it's also interested for those interested in sort of the development of watersheds, but also ecosystems and other aspects of biogeography. One of the things that we notice is that below this line, you tend to have more deciduous trees, and so trees that drop their leaves. And as you move north, you tend to have more trees that are coniferous, so various kinds of pine trees. So not only are they better drought adapted, and also, well, maybe not so much drought adapted as cold adapted, but they're also kind of better suited for the sorts of soils that we find in that area. I will stop here with that, but I do want to go on and just elaborate a bit more about how Peterborough then provides us a window into larger geomorphological processes, I suppose, that shape the rest of the province as well. Here we have a slide that helps set the larger context for Peterborough and its relation to the Canadian Shield, at least as it exists in Ontario. So one of the names for the Canadian Shield is the Cambrian Shield. I think on the previous slide it was referred to on the map as a Precambrian Shield. So it goes by a couple of different names. It covers, and it's shown in this kind of this area here, all the way down to here to Peterborough. So all of that is the Canadian Shield, and it's about 2/3 of the province. That is a lot of land. Most of it is covered by what are called crown lands, which are properties owned by the province or held by the province for ostensibly for the people, and they are probably the most used to the degree that humans use them as sites of mineral exploration or timber harvesting, as well as just large areas that are uninhabited or very sparsely inhabited. On this map, if we go down a bit further, or actually here, and I bet you cannot see my blasted marker. Here, I'll put this around here in blue. So this area here, right all down here, let me now erase that. That is roughly the area around Peterborough. So on this map, which comes originally from there's the source for it, from the Ministry of Natural Resources, and I found it in a report about the forestry sector in Ontario. In that document, this map is used to show that for forestry, at least, Ontario can be kind of broken into three areas. So you have these Hudson Bay lowlands way up here, which are areas that were also covered by ice sheets. I mean, actually all of Ontario was covered by ice sheets till about 15 to 12,000 years ago. And areas, basically everything north of southern Ontario was experienced a lot of, I guess the fancy term would be transportation of debris by glaciers. So kind of a cruder way to put it might be that these sheets of ice that were 2, 3, maybe 4 kilometers thick, as they formed and as they sort of slowly moved south, crushed the land and scraped anything loose off of it. And one of the things that happens then is that in southern Ontario, or at least what they're calling southern Ontario on this map, we have areas that received, that you might think of as the dumping grounds for all that material that was scraped loose. And I will sort of stop here on this slide. On the next slide, what I want to do is just cover a little bit more of the different kinds of underlying geologies or that formed sort of during the last sort of ice age or ice sheets, so during the Quaternary. And let me stop here. So this is a map of Ontario's Quaternary geology. Quaternary geology refers to the geology of an area that was formed in the last 2.6 million years. And kind of the key feature of this Quaternary geology is that most of the province counts as what we see here as bedrock, right? So I'll put a little like red 1 next to that. And so bedrock is found kind of all through here. So this is largely exposed bedrock, or surfaces without very well-developed soils. So these are soils that would have developed, since the retreat of the last ice ages. And that, again, is the area that was on the previous map that was identified as the Canadian Shield, as you will remember. Okay. So, and the Canadian Shield is largely bedrock. So just to the north of that, we're not going to talk very much about that at all, but this area kind of right up here, I'll put a 2 next to it. So all of that is area that was also covered by ice sheets at one time, but is now, at least in terms of this forestry document that I referred to, there seeing this as what they're calling it organic areas. So this is taiga, so it's arboreal forest. So this is almost all coniferous trees, as well as wetlands. The organic term here refers to the fact that this area, partially because of the kind of poor drainage qualities of the soil, has been an area where lots of peat moss, sphagnum moss has formed, and over thousands of years has grown, and originally grew in water, and then as either the water level comes down or as hundreds of years of this moss dies, soil that sort of as it dies, it breaks down and becomes soil, raises the level of the earth so that it's higher than the water. And so that is what we see up in that area. And that's not really anywhere close to Peterborough, so we're going to skip the rest of that. And then the rest of these categories, let me see here. We're not going to worry too much with, which one was it? I want to say that lacustrine is the one we're not going to worry about, or lacustrine. I'm never very good at pronouncing that. Basically, that refers to areas or geology that reflects the fact that there used to be a lake there, and as that lake dried up, it is now sort of covered in the sediment that used to be in the bottom of that lake. The rest of these categories, then, let me see here. So we've got this one, so those two, those are related to glaciers, so glaciofluvial. We'll see this down here a little bit in the Peterborough area. Hold on a second. Let me just bring up, so roughly Peterborough's there. So a wee bit of this, these kinds of geological features. So this reflects geological features that were formed by rivers that formed on top of or flowing off of glaciers and depositing material. And then this glaciolacustrine, this kind of mustardy yellow color, there's some of that kind of around Peterborough, maybe a little bit. Those refer to glacial lakes and the deposits that they leave behind. There's this other one, glaciomarine. I have a hard time seeing any of those. I guess there's a little bit maybe up here, but we're not going to worry about that too much. So, but glacio, so technically then glaciomarine, even though I don't really see it too much on this map, but also till, so glacial till, so unsorted, unstratified, silt, sand, clay, gravel, even boulders, that kind of material corresponds to these, it's a wretched circle there, it corresponds to these really dark areas. And so the point that we see here is that Peterborough has, in the north, an area that's largely bedrock geology, and then south of that are areas where there's a mixture of glacial processes that dropped or deposited material in the landscape. Because there are all of these different geographies or geologies, if you will, in this relatively small area, that's one of the reasons we like to send physical geographers there, because they can travel from down here in the south up into the north a little bit. You can't really see that. Let me get rid of that. Nope. So we can take our physical geographers, have them travel from sort of the bottom of the area up towards the top. So up in that kind of that general direction. And as they do so, what do they see? They see different results of glacial processes. So it's like a bit of a living laboratory, I suppose you might think of it in that way. Okay, we will stop there. But if you are a physical geographer, you might keep this then in mind as you are writing your proposal. for this course, because these kinds of geologies, if you will, in conjunction with the fact that Lake Ontario is sort of just right kind of in this area, interact to affect the kinds of species and whether they're animal or plant types that we find in this area, and also the various kinds of drainage patterns that we see in the Otonabee watershed. I will stop there. Thanks for listening.